Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And have we got a treat for you this afternoon, listeners? Welcome to the show, Diane Bay.
Hi, Simon. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So Diane and I spoke a couple of months ago now, before Christmas, and she kindly sent me a copy of her book, Finding Karen Black, which is a reunion story and search story. Luckily, Diane told me which chapter to read if I couldn't manage to read the whole lot. So there is a very exquisite chapter when, what would you say, when you kind of come out of the fog? Would you call it that, or what would you tell us about the chapter to whet the listeners' appetites and kickstart our conversation?
All right. I think out of the fog is a very good way to put it. I had found my mother. We had a reunion, and I was kind of on cloud nine, so to speak. And then there was a moment where I was watching her on the internet, and I heard her sing, and it broke something open inside of me. And I realized powerfully that there really was this wound that I had been carrying around, that I really did have anger toward her for giving me up, that I needed to work through.
Yeah. There's something about music, isn't there? So my wife goes to the opera. I think she's been to opera like 3 or 4 times in her life, and they're usually in Italian. And so she doesn't speak Italian, so she has no idea what they're singing about, right? And when we're listening to music, a lot of the time, as you know, like just stuff that's sung in English, we're not listening to the words. It's the music itself that does that for us, and has the power. And so something broke you open, right?
Yes, and as I was working through it over the next while, I began to realize that that what I had heard was the voice that I had heard when I was in her womb, and that I had been carrying her around with me all my life. But the memory was not just warm and fuzzy, because it was also wrapped in this hollowness of abandonment. But that was a revelation to me to know.
Yeah. It's a great word, isn't it? Revelation. We use the word kind of reveal quite a lot, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of power. But the word revelation, it's a bit like epiphany, isn't it? It's like, it's big.
It's how it felt.
It's big, yeah. It's big.
And it was a very good step toward healing.
Yeah. And very interesting that the fog came after the reunion. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of adoptees, and that isn't, I've never heard that one before. I guess there must be somebody else out there that's done that. I just haven't spoken to them. But there's however many millions of adoptees in the world, but there's so it's strange, isn't it? So there's a cloud. You use the word cloud 9. So there's a cloud 9, and then there's a crash.
Yes. I think the reason why I didn't feel that most of my life is because of the way my adoptive father told me that I was adopted. He couched it in words that were uplifting, in a way that I would feel good about my birth mother. That she wanted me, but she couldn't keep me, so she gave them to my adoptive parents. And so that, coupled with a lot of my lifelong events in my life, helped me to always have a good positive feeling. She was like this shining fictional character, you know, who might be looking up at the moon at the same time I was and thinking about me. So, and then it wasn't until after our reunion that I realized that deep inside there was this wound that I had to work through.
Yeah. And you mentioned in that chapter that also that there was the fear of losing her. You'd had this cloud nine, and then there was the fear of losing her. So maybe that was something that opened it up. Maybe
it could be.
Who knows?
Right? I don't know. It was different because there was so much delight in finding her, but at the same moment there was all this dread because she had cancer when I found her. And so as the year went by, which we had, I was watching her deteriorate. So
yeah. And also I remember from reading that the book that she was not the most easy to get hold of. So like and I it as I talk about that now, I remember going to a, so this is, I was 18, so I'm 50, 56. I told somebody else I was 57 last week. I don't know why I did that, because I've wished away a year of my life. I'm only 56. I was about 18, so whatever that is, 38 years. I'd met a girl in a nightclub, and I don't know, we call it snogging. You call it necking, I think, do you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this girl was really pretty, and I was due to see her the following night, but I was waiting for her to ring me. Obviously, no mobile phones. She was supposed to be ringing me at work, I think. I was working in a candy shop, sweet shop. And I remember sitting there waiting for this phone to ring. Mm. And it was painful.
Yes.
So there was cloud nine the night before, because she was kind of out of my league. Or I thought, and then the crash the following day when she didn't ring.
Yeah, Karen was a very busy lady. She was working all the time up to the very end, and so she would text me fairly often, but to try to actually talk to her on the phone, it just didn't happen much at all.
Yeah.
But I was able to spend a good 6 weeks with her during that year. So we did get to know each other well.
Yeah. So maybe it's just me projecting as I read that chapter and the kind of the
well, sure, the chapter was right in the middle of the time when I was starting to have difficulty getting a hold of her, and she had actually gotten pneumonia and been in the hospital, but no one had thought to call me to tell me. So I was feeling a little bit left out of the loop, so to speak. Yeah.
Wow. So, but in that chapter, there was, can you explain the closure? There seemed to be a closure within, we're talking halfway through the book. We didn't have to wait to the end of the book for closure. There was a closure in that chapter for you. That's what I sensed anyway.
It was it's a meat of what happened to me. And then, of course, after that, you go on to understand, what happened with Karen as her illness started taking over, but that her spirit was always very, very bright. But for me, I had been carrying around a melancholy feeling all my life, never really understanding it. It was this feeling that was, and I had trouble describing it. It was like it was sadness, but it wasn't all sadness. It was also like a light inside of it, a love inside of it. And that's what I figured out working through that moment of my heart opening up. I figured out that that feeling I had was the warmth of having my mother, being in her womb, and it was wrapped inside of this hollow emptiness of being abandoned. So I think that helped me a lot, because I realized that I did have Karen in my heart all those years. And maybe that's why I was all right all that time, until I was able to see the pain. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. What comes after the fog? If we extend that metaphor,
okay.
If we extend a weather metaphor, the metaphor of the fog, okay. It's an area that fascinates me, because everybody talks about coming out of the fog, but nobody actually carries on the metaphor to say what happens next, or what, like what we see. But so how do you see it?
What happened to me was that it was almost as though I stepped into a three-dimensional world, kind of like, the old Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy steps through the door and suddenly it's color. I was able to begin to see myself more and more clearly, begin to accept who I was, begin to accept the life I had lived, and get to the point where I felt, because I had now had known who Karen was, and my father, and lots of relatives, including lots of information about my forebears, I was able to piece everything together. Like it was like puzzle pieces all falling together. So I would say it was like walking out into a sunny forest suddenly, when you can hear the birds, and you can feel the sunlight on your skin, when before you were almost like a ghost walking in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. It does. And you said that you could see yourself. So how would you represent yourself within the metaphor?
I would say, like, suddenly I had a real body. If I looked in the stream, I could see my reflection.
Ah, right. Ah, okay. Yeah. So that would kind of work, wouldn't it? Because if we were in the fog, and it's really a real pea super, and we looked in the mirror, we looked in the stream, then we wouldn't see ourselves, because right. The fog would stop us seeing itself.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. The thing I came up with on this a couple of weeks ago was that we're out of the fog, but it's not blue sky. So this is probably more about my experience than yours, right? So we're out of the fog. After the fog, there's a sense of mist.
Okay.
There's a bit of mist, and then but in front of us, we can make out a lighthouse.
Ah, nice.
Okay, and that lighthouse is who we are. So in the fog, we could see the light. In the mist, we can see the light better, and as we keep going, the mist lifts, and we see and we see ourselves as the lighthouse. So it's a little bit more poetic, but I think yours is better. I think yours is better. because you're seeing yourself, the fact that you're seeing yourself, a reflection of yourself in the stream, whereas like I'm equating who we are with a lighthouse, right? So it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Oh, I like it.
Simon's a lighthouse, Diane's a lighthouse. You know what I mean? Like it's a bit.
But in yours, you're walking toward that light. It took you some time to get there, whereas mine sort of lifted. It was more of a momentary thing. Not, within a few weeks or a couple of months, as opposed to over a period of time.
Yeah.
So I think they're both valid.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you've seen this. I've started doing a bit of poetry. Have you seen this on some
No,
Facebook
I haven't.
group? Right. So I started doing a bit of poetry, and I did it on the back of hearing somebody say nobody argues with a poet. Right.
Okay.
So people argue with this guy's. He's people might call him a teacher. He doesn't like being called a teacher. There's a guy called Rupert Spira who I name check all the time, and he said so some people might call him a philosopher, but he makes he said, well, people argue with philosophers. That's part of philosophy. It's about arguing, isn't it? Or sharing opinions, not necessarily arguing in the way that most people argue these days. He said, but people argue with it, and he occasionally quotes poetry, and he kind of knows it off by heart, right? So because he's a fan of the classics, and I don't, right? So shall I read my Out of the Fog poem to you? Would you like that?
I would love that.
Yeah. So it's called. I've done a few different versions of it, so I think this is one I did last night. Out of the fog, blind in engulfing fog, stumbling through life, bumping blind and oblivious, gut punching trauma unseen. Fog gone in an eye-popping instant, furious storm clouds revealed. Angry, scared tears deluge, threaten the ground beneath. Clinging on in for dear life, the clouds dropping bombs, white-knuckled, gasping for breath. Frigid and all alone, freezing rain, soaked to the skin, chilled to the bone. Downpour turns to patter, holes pepper the umbrella, relief ripples out, flood dies out. All dried out, not a cloud in the sky. Sun dances, happiness reigns. Sight arrives in a stunning split second. Fog always lifts. Clouds always pass, but there's always the sky. The eternal sky, the constant eye. An ominous cloud rolls rumbling in, batten down the hatches again. Then the same shockwave bursts, the eternal sky, the constant eye. Fluffy clouds dance carefree, loving the moment finally. Then the same shockwave bursts, the eternal sky, the constant eye.
Wow, that was fantastic. Very cool.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You said that Karen's spirit was bright.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that's where the lighthouse does work, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's how the lighthouse does work. Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at in the poem is, well, can you take a guess?
That your true self is always there. You might not feel it, you might not see it, but it's there underneath and like foundational to everything that you go through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my take on it, and that's kind of the theme that we came up with before Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is what did we come up with? Realizing our true self, or something like that.
Something like that. Yes, that
Right.
was. I believe that was it.
Yeah. So, what does realizing our true self mean to you?
Well, for me, it had to do with not with change, and you didn't say anything about change either. It had to do with accepting these things about myself, seeing the connection to who my parents, my grandparents were, how that affected me. Even little things like knowing Karen, I she moves like me. I was always
Oh.
I'm half Italian, and she isn't. My birth father's all Italian, and so in my adoptive family, I didn't really fit in. I wasn't like anybody. But then sitting there with Karen, I'm looking at this person who is, her gestures and her expressions are all mine, and suddenly it was like having a mirror for the first time, and I could see myself. And that same experience happened to me kind of in layers as I slowly was able to process these things about myself and accept them. Like, I've always been artistic, but knowing Karen, and with her acceptance of me and with her acceptance of my abilities, then I was able to kind of take off, I would say, and feel free enough to find my way and see myself and be myself.
Yeah. Do you like opera?
I do not.
No. Okay. Interesting. You talked about the mirror, because we had the mirror in the stream. Mm-hmm. when you continued the metaphor, and the mirror, you Karen mirroring you. You said processing. Use the words processing these things, and like, it's a word we use quite a lot, isn't it? Processing stuff. I don't know. I don't really know what it means.
Okay. When I talk about it, I think about, well, I'm a right brain person, and when I learn something, then it has to kind of sit inside me for a while, and my brain will kind of turn through it somehow, and I start seeing how it connects to things. I start being able to take that new knowledge and use it. And it's like when you're in school and they build things up one on each other, so that, you go from arithmetic to calculus, and you can't make that jump unless you have those steps to go through. I think that's what processing is about.
So is that like a left brain person would see the connections first and then get the big picture, whereas you get the big picture first and you make the connections afterwards? So it's right brain leads, then left brain follows. Is that what you mean?
Yes. It's I see the global picture, and then I can take the steps. Yes, it's global. That's my learning style, is globally. Yes. So that's what, to my kind of person, that's what processing is. You grasp it, and then you are able to work through it and make a difference in your life.
Yeah. Because to me, when I think of processing, I think of kind of more like coming to terms with stuff, or okay, not being as triggered.
Okay, sure.
Or understanding.
That is another way to look at the whole thing. I guess that's more of an emotional way to look at it. Like I tend to do more, I guess I was looking at it more in an intellectual way, maybe, but emotionally processing, yes, is the point of becoming able to not react when things are pressing your buttons, right? That's important. That's hard to do.
So, yeah, I had one yesterday, actually. I was talking to a mentor of mine, and I had to do it without too much I'm trying to edit, not give you too much. Okay. So I said, I've made a mistake. I've apologized, and I've realized and it's not being accepted. I've realized that my apology was, it had too many it had some caveats in it, and I didn't, and I just rushed at the apology. I rushed at the apology.
Okay.
But I did mean it. And my mentor coach lady said, no, you didn't.
Wow.
And then we had another go. And I felt myself rising. I felt my ego rising to, and then I realized that she was her questions, or her statements back to me, were upsetting, and they must be upsetting a part of me that I didn't know, because I couldn't really figure out. But then I got to it. So what she was doing is that she was challenging my self-image as a good guy.
Right. Okay.
And I never realized I had that. I'd never seen it as clearly as that, like, okay. So she was rattling the cage of me being a force for good. Which was quite eye-opening. Yeah. So what do you think stopped us, whichever way you want to answer it, us realizing our true self?
For me, I believe that it was primarily because I didn't have those biological connections. That I think that people that are raised with their biological people, their identity is built from a very early age, before they even think about it, by being able to mirror these people all around them. But I did not have that. And so I couldn't see myself. I'm not really different than I used to be, but I feel it's like now I know who I am, because I went through that whole thing, the year together. And then afterwards too, I've grown, because I still have Benny and his family and Karen's son in my life. And I don't know, it's hard to express, but it really, it made everything click together for me.
Yeah. So before we started recording, you said that we were talking about primal wisdom, and you said,
Yes.
"Oh, I don't think non-adopted people can understand how we feel," and
Yes.
I had the kind of I had a light bulb moment when I thought, well, if non-adopted people can't understand how adopted people feel, why do we as adopted people think that we can understand how they feel?
Yes, and I didn't realize I was kind of making an assumption, right? When I said what I said, because I think maybe they don't see it, but maybe they do. Everyone has a unique story. And generalizing things usually isn't really the best idea. So you're helping me to see that I need to realize this is only my story.
So what I do my healing work, okay, amongst non-adopted people.
Okay. Okay.
Just not as a conscious choice. It's just what happened. Okay. It's just the places that happened. I've not yeah, it wasn't a decision. It wasn't a conscious decision. It's just the way things have panned out. And most of them think there's something wrong with them too.
There you go.
So they are separated from their true selves too.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm generalizing here. We're saying don't generalize, and obviously, yeah, I agree, don't generalize. But this is part of, for me, this separation from spirit via the illusory ego, is part of the human condition.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
So you described Diane's, sorry, not you. You described Karen's. You described Karen's spirit. The spirit was bright.
Yes.
Okay. So one way I kind of see this is that, in terms of a metaphor, we are all that spirit. We are one spirit, and that spirit that each of us is veiled to a lesser or greater degree.
Okay.
So, and what veils spirit is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to go, spirit was bright, the spirit was bright, okay, and then we go back to the lighthouse kind of idea. Yes. Then the lighthouse is not visible either in the mist or in the fog. No.
And the fog is because of trauma.
The fog is a metaphor for trauma.
Okay. All right. And even if we don't know about the trauma, it's still there, hampering us.
Yeah, I guess probably I'm probably trying to mix too many metaphors together. So let's just go. So you've heard me, you've seen me do the diamond in the knuckle thing. Have you seen me doing that? Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Do it.
So my preferred metaphor that I believe represents relinquishment,
Okay.
adoption trauma. It is my knuckle. Is a knuckle. So the clenched fist.
Okay.
Clenched fist represents our trauma. It's a fist that's clenched. It's a hand that's clenched because it's about anger. So
okay. Right.
let me do it because I've got a shorter poem. I've done a poem on that one as well. So this kind of this is a little bit more. So I'm going to evoke it rather than describe it. So the poem's called Beneath. It's a bit shorter than the last one. So beneath, a fist fast in fury, white knuckled in fear, tight and terrified in trauma, angry and alone. Fingers loosen, a glimmer glints, dancing like shards. Fingers unfurl, sparkles explode, shimmers cascade and fizz. Palm flat and open reveals, shed of trauma, nature clear, unveiled majesty shining for all, precious, priceless. So
very nice.
So it's if we can say that the primal wound lives on as the primal wound is a feeling, right? So we were both primarily wounded, in the 60s, yeah,
yeah,
50s,
59. Yeah.
So you were primarily wounded in 59. I was primarily wounded in 67. We're just going with this, right? That lives on as a feeling.
Right.
The trauma is a feeling.
Okay.
Well, it's a mixture of feelings and thoughts. What else could it be other than that?
I don't know. I think of it like a tangle, almost like here you are, very similar to the fist idea, only it was, to me, it was more like a roots all tangled together over a thing, and you have to find your way out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I guess
if it wasn't a thought or a feeling, I love the metaphor, but
yeah.
if it wasn't a thought or a feeling, what else would it be? It might be a subconscious thought. They have thoughts and subconscious thoughts, feelings.
I'm going to have to think about that a lot, because I don't think of it as a thought or a feeling. More of a reality. But what I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I think.
But it's a reality, like a mindset, like a projection. I talk about the projection of rejection. Do you know what I mean? Like we're the projection of, like it's reality, but it's our reality, isn't it? It exists. It only exists in thoughts and feelings.
It's like being chained up.
Yeah,
but I don't know about a feeling, because I didn't feel it. It was almost like I was so used to the little prison that I didn't feel it. I didn't know it was there, but it was still.
Me neither.
Yeah, but it was really there.
What's it made? What's the prison? What the prison? We're using metaphors here, right?
Yes, I'm thinking
chains. We're using chains. We're using prison walls. But it's a metaphor. So the walls are made of bricks, but what are the bricks made of? Aren't they made of just thoughts?
No,
They're not
I don't
made
know.
of feelings.
I'm really going to think about this now, because I don't know. But it was real anyway, even though I didn't know it.
Oh yeah. So what's reality made of?
Right. Jeez.
Ooh,
these are big thoughts, Simon.
Yeah.
Make me think too hard.
Well, they're made of, reality is made of, it's made of thought. Let me Okay, I don't quote Shakespeare, but I did quote him yesterday. Was it on a podcast? Was it on a conversation? I can't remember. Shakespeare said something like, nothing in life that happens inherently has meaning. Only thinking makes it so.
Wow.
Something like that.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So it's made of thought.
Okay.
Made of thought. And what a feeling's made of, they're made of thought as well, really.
I don't know the answer to that.
Mindset. I mean, okay. Well, okay. Let's go. Let's just say that, because let's just say that it's thoughts and feelings.
Okay.
The trauma is made of thoughts and feelings. So, right. Adoption trauma, the primal wound. What's it made of? It's made of shame. What shame? Shame is a feeling.
Right.
If shame was a thought, in summarized in one sentence, it would be, I don't feel good enough. I feel there's something wrong with me. I think there's something wrong with me.
And I did feel that way. I always felt, yes, that's true. I did. I was never good enough. I was actually inferior to other people. Not just that I felt that way, but I really was inferior to other people. That was my thinking about myself.
And me too. And me, pretty much everybody else feels that way too. They just don't.
That's sad. I don't know if I figured
to a lesser or greater extent.
Yeah. I mean, I did feel like other people looked at me and didn't see someone who was their peer.
Well, we've got a really good reason, right? So the other reasons that people think that they're not good enough. The biggest one outside of the biggest one, or most common one I hear outside of the adoption world, is being bullied as a kid.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So they're told, or not being good enough at, not being good enough at something, not being clever enough, not being bright enough, not being a good enough footballer. Being, as a kid, being in a sports team and being left out, being the last kid to be picked. Yeah, what's wrong with me? I'm talking about myself here, right? Being left out of the rugby team. I'm a bad rugby player. Rugby's important to me. I like rugby. I'm a bad rugby player. I'm a bad person. That sort of line. But everybody does, right? But we adoptees, we've got cast iron proof that we're not good enough.
Oh, right. Sure. Because our own mothers didn't.
Our own mothers. How on earth could our own mothers? And this is why I think this is a massive generalization. So I'm sorry if, but because with it, women understand motherhood. They know that they have a stronger, weaker or stronger maternal drive. Right. So that bond is more visceral for you women. Massive generalization. Sorry, listeners, but do you know what I mean? You know where I'm going?
Okay.
This is visceral. Like it's instinctive. It's instinctive for women. So you're even more perplexed about how anybody how a birth mother could break that bond.
I think that was one really real healing moment for me, was finding out how hard it had been on Karen. And yes. I think that that's something that as a child, yes. you don't understand yes. that was hard. I want to read. Here's what she said to me when she talked about, we talked about this openly. And she said, "It's quite unnatural for a mother to be separated from her newborn. I remember sitting in a fetal position on my bed, rolling along the wall, unable to control my sobbing. They didn't let me hold you. If they had, I would never have let you go. I got to see you one time. A kind nurse led me to a window. I peered through the glass and you were in distress. You had scratched your little face with your fingernails. It was all so much to bear." And that was very healing for me to know that
yes,
she actually had the wound also.
Yes. Yes. I did ask you if you were going to make me cry, and you, yeah, I'm filling up. But more than that, I'm goose bumping all over because that was of my healing moments when so your mum, Karen, your birth mum, Karen, she told you that, right? Or did she she didn't send that in a text, did she?
No.
You sent her a text. That was an email.
We were talking on the phone at that time, and then in person too. So yeah.
So when I read the letter from my birth mother to the social worker at the adoption agency, and you felt Karen's love for you in a conversation with her, and that presumably was one of your zenith kind of healing moments, was it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. For mine, when I read, but I read it. I read it in a letter.
That's wonderful.
I read it in a letter, and she'd written that letter in. It's around. Yeah, we're recording this on the 1st of February. She probably wrote it. That's a bit spooky. Now my left brain wants to actually nail it down to the exact date. Yeah. She probably wrote it around the 1st of February, within plus or minus 2 or 3 days, 1967. Wow. And I read the letter. I want to say July 2015, something like that. And when I read that letter, when I felt her love for me in a letter that she wrote to the social, and her desperation, actually, her love for me, and the desperation of her predicament. And when you talked about Karen's, I've got you going, have I?
Yeah. What a treasure that letter is. That's so wonderful. I'm so happy for you to have that.
That's the most visceral, it's the most easy to understand healing moments. I've had lots of other healing moments, but when I share them with others, they don't land. But that lands especially when I read the letter and stuff to people. And that, so for me, the tears, I'm guessing you were crying when Karen told you that. Did you cry?
I didn't cry. I'm not a crier. I cried later.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was just soaking everything in.
Okay. You were processing.
Yeah, there you go.
So for me, as I read the letter from my birth mother, the hot tears came running down my face, and they washed away the 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 a chunk of the trauma. The trauma in that moment, there was none, because I'd seen the teddy bear as a consolation prize in my anger, and it became a dear token of her love.
Yes.
Reading that letter,
Yes.
and I use the word, what's trauma made of? I tried mindset on, I said thoughts, feelings, mindset. So what the reading the letter did, what the tears did, is they, it was a revelation, going back to your word earlier at the top of the conversation. Sure. It revealed how wrong I was.
Right. You didn't know.
Wrong
and I
in my anger. Wrong in my anger. Wrong in my 40 seconds of anger towards. Like you said that you hadn't felt anger towards Karen.
I didn't feel anger in my life, and then when I heard her song, it made me see that there was this trauma. And then I felt the anger. But then, I mean, it wasn't very long. It was probably a couple of months in reality that I had to process through and get over that feeling of anger toward her that I found.
I had 40 seconds of anger towards Pat.
Yeah. 40 seconds?
I reckon, on 2 different occasions.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Of the intense nature, of the intense kind.
Okay.
But the tears washed away there.
It's awesome.
The tears washed away, because I saw that my projection, my reality, actually. You said what's I said what's the did I say what's the primal wound made out of?
Yeah.
And you said reality. Okay, so I saw that my reality was utterly incorrect. A total work of fiction.
I understand that. And now what do you do? What do you do with that knowledge?
Well, I run a podcast.
There you go. Right. It's a very good way to do it. Good way to process.
Took me a while, right, to get from there to there. So I came up with a little idea this morning. I'd like to run by you, which is like a change in a change of mind,
okay,
a change of heart, and I the one I had this morning was a change of life, but I'm going to go with yours, actually, a change of reality. So a change of mind, change of heart, a change of reality. So what I mean by that, but what I mean by change of reality is you out of the fog into brilliant daylight, able to see yourself in the mirror of the stream.
Yes.
That's a change of reality.
Yes.
So with the podcast, we're trying to change minds, change feelings, change hearts, and change realities.
Very good. I like it. I think what I did with mine is I wrote the book,
Bingo.
right? So
You'd
writing,
seen that before, though. You'd seen that shift. You'd
yes.
seen that you've used that. So the shift
Okay.
was the
Between
catalyst. The shift.
being in the fog to being out of the fog. Yes, I knew that it was happening, and writing it down helped me to, I don't know, I guess understand it more clearly.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping
Process
that
it.
if other people read my book, that it'll help them too, right?
Yeah, that's why you wrote it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, listeners, you better go to the show notes and see, check it out.
So Finding Karen Black, it's available on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, yeah. We'll have links in there.
Okay.
We'll have all the links in there in the show notes. So you don't need to try and do that when you're driving or walking the dog if you're listening to this podcast. So is there anything else that you'd like to share, Karen? Karen? No, that's your mum. Diane, is there anything you want to share?
No, I don't know. Simon, you've given me a lot to think about. This has been a treat. It's really, you're doing, this is a really good show, a really good deep dive, so to speak, into our hearts, into our minds, and trying to help us, you know, to get out of that fog. It's really good.
Thank you. And I'm going to be using your after the fog stuff. I might even write a poem. About it.
Yeah, I like it.
Unless you're up for, you want to do that yourself, we could have a poem off. You could write one. It'll be the fourth one I've written in my life. So is yeah, I agree. It's been a treat. Too. And I would say we're looking into our minds, into our hearts, and into our spirit.
Yes, I agree with that.
Is there anything that you'd like to ask me?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Right, listeners, thank you for listening, and we will speak to you again very soon. Bye.